Hello again. We're going to take a quick overview look of this incredibly devastating hurricane Dorian, and as to whether there were elements of geoengineering and management involved in its passage and its performance. The main thing, as you see it coming in on the lower right, that held it in check was a massive high-pressure bubble over most of the continental United States. There may be other things that were involved which will be brought up. Also, notice coming in at the top is one of our old favorites, the nighttime superstorm supercell structure, conveniently located as usual, with great aim, dead center. But that will be the last while Dorian starts to do its thing. Now, normally hurricanes form coming off the coast of Africa, and a spin is imparted there, but Dorian is right there. It's just a featureless blob, and moves as a featureless blob across the Atlantic, and doesn't assume a hurricane-like structure until it gets a lot closer to the United States. This is most unusual in its formation, and also is described by a stormy wizard from Oklahoma City that dust from Africa actually coated Oklahoma, and is why there haven't been any hurricanes except for this one, because that dust normally prevents evaporation from taking place on the ocean surface, and yet here we have this phenomenon as we note its passage, which will be looked at more closely. So here, even then, it's now finally it's getting some spin, but it's nearly it's at Cuba and nearly at Bermuda. This is NASA World View, showing one photograph each successive day. You see how the blob, but within a couple of days it turns into that. Now we're looking at the next rad system, which is performing normally during the day. Nothing to get excited about. As Dorian is approaching, and during night, approaching midnight, we see that superstorm developing, and then all of a sudden they just blossom and explode into a high energy system that's, well, there it is. It's awful darn odd. The contrast of amount of rain and heat between Dorian itself, the outer edges, and the superstorm were notable. Here it is after as it's leaving, destroying Bermuda and approaching the coast. Notice the extreme clarity of the eye. This is what really drew my attention. But as it leaves, it gains strength again, which is also quite notable. Here we have no superstorms forming at night, even though there's plenty of water vapor. Were they natural, which they're not. The incredibly clear structure of the eye. In the old days, it always had an eye, but recent hurricanes of the past several years have not had eyes except for a very brief period. Again, during the day, as it approaches, it can't breach that wall. It's like hitting a wall and barely sliding along it. But as midnight approaches, there we go again. Notice Hurricane Irma has virtually no eye. Hurricane Harvey, no eye, although it did have an eye for a brief period of time. And as you see here, It's small, but it gets filled. See, at top above the hurricane forms are wonderful supercell structures, which we have shown are induced by high energy microwaves, which fills the eye with a circular form that has nothing to do with the spiral generation. Florence was held in place for an extended period of time, was incredibly devastating. No eye. I don't remember what Hurricane Michael did, but superstorms were generated along that marvelous central corridor. Now, which must be brought up in another situation, is the great fall off of so-called chemtrails. But we see here a great proliferation of them, and you can see many of them in parallel lines. None of them are more than 80 to 100 mile long. There are just tons of them. Remembering that aluminum oxide helps facilitate the transmission and efficacy of electromagnetic propagation. That's where those were going in. It's rather empty on the east side, but suddenly you see more sort of forming night during the day, and then night will fall. Will NEXRAD do its thing again? Will there be a tremendous energy burst from them all? So that thing's never coming in. Now this is very interesting because you see a jump where about 4 hours are cut out from all the GEOS imagery. And there's a reason for that. The satellite didn't fail. Okay, see that formation starting on the east. Then suddenly it cuts where there's a tremendous amount has been developed along that curving line. This is why it was cut, because people would recognize, who are aware of the real nature of hurricane mitigation and the introduction of either aerosol or microwave heating along the outer perimeter, which then vitiates the energy and draws energy away from the core. This was a diagram that was from the Hurricane Aerosol Microphysics program, but was removed from the internet, so I did that one from memory. But it shows what happens when it's introduced on one side and it draws energy away from the core. They don't want you to know that anymore, and that's why that was cut, because people would, in the know, would recognize that phenomenon had taken place, and it's done again right there. And you can actually see as it starts to draw energy away, and the core is the spiral energy is lost, even though some cloud formation still took place. But to close, this is great, because I uploaded this at 1 a.m. and checked at 2:30, and lo and behold, dead center. What is the probability that there would be one dead center as Dorian is gone? I believe the answer is trillions to one.